the day her ex-husband laughed at her. In front of half-town, Vivian had a sleeping baby on her hip and flour on her apron and exactly $12 in her coat pocket. She hadn't planned to be at the farmer's market that morning. Harper had been fussy since 4 a.m., cutting her third tooth and refusing to be put down, so Vivian had strapped her to her chest, grabbed her keys, and driven out to the edge of Millbrook just to feel like she was moving somewhere, instead of standing still inside the wreckage of her own life. She bought apples. She bought a small jar of local honey. She was reaching for a bundle of dried lavender, the kind she used to hang above her coffee bar before she had the money for proper diffusers, when she heard his voice. Viv. She turned around slowly, the way you do when you already know what you're about to face. Jason stood 20 feet away with his new girlfriend, a woman named Tara, who worked in commercial real estate and wore the kind of effortless blonde highlights that cost $800 and looked like they didn't. They were holding matching cold brews. They looked like a magazine ad for something she couldn't afford. "Hey," Vivian said. Jason looked at Harper, then back at Vivian's apron, and he did this thing with the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, not quite a wince. The expression of a man who had already narrated a story about her in his head and was satisfied with how it ended. "Still doing the coffee thing?" he asked. "Still doing the coffee thing," she said. Tara smiled politely, the kind of smile that means I've heard about you. Jason's eyes drifted to the flour-dusting Vivian's sleeve, to Harper gnawing on a teething ring, to the small, obvious fact of Vivian's life. Alone at a farmer's market with a baby and $12 and a face that hadn't had more than 5 consecutive hours of sleep in months. "She's cute," Tara said, nodding at Harper. "She's everything," Vivian said, and she meant it, and she didn't explain herself further. She bought the lavender. She walked to her car. She didn't cry until she was on the highway, and Harper had finally fallen asleep in the car seat, and there was no one to see her. She had opened Rowan Coffee 3 years ago, the summer before everything fell apart, back when Jason was still her husband, and her biggest problem was whether to go with white oak floors or reclaimed pine. She'd chosen reclaimed pine. She'd been right. The shop was small, 6 tables, a bar with 8 stools, a chalkboard menu she updated every morning before 6. But it was hers, genuinely hers, the one thing in her life that had stayed solid when everything else dissolved. She lived in the apartment above it now. Harper's crib was in the corner of her bedroom, behind a curtain of sheer linen. Her mornings started at 5:15. Her nights ended whenever they ended, which was usually past 11, after she'd finished ordering and reconciling and emailing her one part-time employee, a 22-year-old named June, who was wonderful and perpetually 20 minutes late. It was not the life she had planned. She had planned for more room, more help, more of something that looked like partnership. What she had instead was a drip coffee that sold out by 8:30 every morning, and a daughter who laughed so hard at bubbles she sometimes fell over, and on most days that was enough. On the bad days, it had to be. The bad days had gotten more frequent in March. A new cafe had opened 3 blocks away. Sleek, minimalist. The kind of place with a QR code for its menu and a playlist that made you feel like you were in a Copenhagen boutique hotel. They had a second espresso machine and a dedicated cold brew tap and a social media presence Vivian could not compete with on her own. She watched her Tuesday foot traffic drop by a third in 6 weeks. She'd been renegotiating her lease when she met him. His name was not the kind of name you forgot. Luca Voss had come in on a Thursday morning at 7:40, before the rush, and sat at the bar without looking at the menu. He was not from Millbrook. You could tell immediately, not because of the clothes, though the coat was the kind of coat that had been made specifically for him, but because of the way he sat, like he was used to being the still point in a moving room. Vivian poured his coffee without asking. Dark roast, no room. Something about him suggested it. He looked up when she set it down, and she had the strange sensation of being assessed very quickly and very completely, the way a doctor looks at a patient, not unkindly, just efficiently. "Good," he said, after the first sip. "I know," she said. Something shifted in his expression. Not a smile exactly. An acknowledgement. He came back Friday. He came back Monday. By the second week, he was arriving at 7:30 and staying until 9 and reading documents she couldn't see in a leather folio that never left his hands. He tipped 40% every time, which June noticed before Vivian did. "He's waiting for something," June said one morning, refilling the cream. "He's working," Vivian said. "He's not looking at his phone. People who are working always look at their phone." Vivian looked over. Luca was looking out the window. His coffee was half finished. His folio was closed. June was probably right. But Vivian had a lease negotiation going south and a tooth-cutting baby and a cash flow projection that looked like a EKG during a panic attack. So she filed Luca Voss under regular customer and moved on with her morning. He asked her name on a Wednesday, 3 weeks after his first visit. "Vivian," she said. "Luca," he said, and extended his hand across the bar like they were in a meeting. She shook it. His grip was steady and brief. She noticed his hands the way she'd learned not to notice things. He had a scar along the inside of his right palm, old and faded, the kind that came from something that happened fast and long ago. "You own this place?" he asked. "I do. The lease is commercial?" She paused. "That's a specific question for a Thursday morning. I apologize." He didn't look particularly apologetic. "I work in real estate investment. Habit, residential or commercial?" He paused the same way she had. A recognition. Commercial, primarily. She leaned against the counter. "Then you probably know about the new place on Alderton." "I know about it." "Is that why you're here? Scouting the competition?" "No," he said. He picked up his coffee. "I'm here because it's better." She didn't ask what he meant by better. She had a feeling he meant more than the coffee. It was April when she found out. Not from him, from her landlord actually, who called on a Tuesday afternoon while Harper was napping and Vivian was doing payroll on the kitchen table with a glass of wine she hadn't had time to drink. "I wanted to let you know before anything's finalized," her landlord said. He sounded uncomfortable. Gerald always sounded uncomfortable delivering news he didn't want to deliver. "The building's been purchased." The wine glass stopped halfway to her mouth. "Purchased, as of last Friday. New owner. I've been meaning to call Al Gerald." She set the glass down very carefully. "What does this mean for my lease?" "Well, that's the thing. The new owner requested a meeting. He wants to discuss the terms going forward. He, a Mr. Voss, Luca Voss, investment company out of." She hung up before she realized she was hanging up. Then she sat very still at her kitchen table for approximately 4 minutes, listening to Harper breathe on the baby monitor, until the shock organized itself into something she could work with. She went downstairs. She turned on every light. She stood behind the bar, and she thought about what it meant that the man who'd been sitting at that bar for 3 weeks had known all along that he was about to own it. He came in the next morning at 7:30, same as always. She put his coffee down in front of him, and then she leaned both arms on the counter and she looked at him. "You bought my building," she said. "I did," he said. "While you were sitting here, the acquisition was already in process when I first came in. I should have disclosed it sooner." "Yes," she said. "You should have." He held her gaze. He wasn't flinching, which she both respected and resented. "You came here to see if the business was viable," she said. "Before you decided what to do with the space, I came to understand what I'd acquired." "Yes, and?" He looked at her for a long moment. "The coffee's exceptional. The margins are tighter than they should be. Your lease rate is below market. The operation is running on one person's work and one person's hours, and that's not sustainable. I have an employee. She arrives at 7:22 and you arrive at 5:15. She's good. You're doing the work of 3 people. Vivian stared at him. "You've been clocking my schedule? I've been sitting at your bar every morning for 3 weeks. I notice things." He wrapped both hands around his mug. "I'm not here to take this from you, Vivian. I want you to know that. That sounds like something someone says right before they take something from you. I know how it sounds." He didn't apologize for it. "I'd like to have a conversation about new lease terms. Not today, when you're ready. But I want you to know the business stays. Whatever happens with the building, the business stays. That's not negotiable." She straightened up. "What does that mean, not negotiable?" "It means it's already decided. I decided it the first morning I walked in." She studied him for a long moment. He didn't look away. "Come back at 4, she said. Harper goes down for her nap at 3:30. I'll have 30 minutes. He came back at 4. He brought folders. He spread them across the bar with the quiet efficiency of someone who had prepared for this conversation for longer than she knew, and what he laid out was not what she'd expected. The lease terms were below what she'd feared. The projected renovation, he wanted to expand the kitchen, add a small window counter for street service, was designed around her existing operation, not despite it. She sat across from him for 90 minutes while Harper slept upstairs. She asked every hard question she could think of. He answered all of them. She didn't sign anything that day, but when he left, she noticed that for the first time in 6 weeks, the tight band of anxiety that had been living across her sternum was slightly, measurably looser. The renovation started in June. Luca hired contractors who worked around her hours. He came in every few days, not daily anymore, because he wasn't pretending to be only a customer, and he'd stand at the edge of the construction and talk to the site manager while Vivian watched from behind the bar, and she was aware, in a way she hadn't been aware of a man in a very long time, of the space he occupied and the way he moved through it. It was her mother who said it first. Her mother, Patricia, drove in from Asheville one Saturday in late June, ostensibly to see Harper, but actually, Vivian knew, to assess Vivian's life with the thorough, affectionate, slightly catastrophizing eye that only a mother can deploy. She arrived at 8 a.m., sat at the bar, drank her coffee, watched the contractors work, watched Luca say something quietly to the site manager that made the site manager laugh and immediately fix something he'd been doing wrong, and then turned to Vivian and said, "Who is that?" "Landlord," Vivian said. Patricia looked at her. "No, yes." "Vivian. Mom. He looked at you just now. He looked over here because I was dropping a milk frother. He looked at you," Patricia said. "Don't tell me the difference." Vivian wiped down the counter. She did not look toward the construction. "He's complicated," she finally said. "All the interesting ones are," her mother said, and picked up her coffee. The renovation finished in August. Rowan Coffee reopened on a Thursday. The same day of the week it had always been her best day, and by 9 o'clock there was a line out the new side door and down the block. Luca came in. He sat at the bar in the same spot he always sat. He ordered the same dark roast. He tipped the same 40%. He looked at the room with quiet satisfaction, the kind that doesn't need to be announced. "You did this," Vivian said. "You did this," he said. "I just gave you more room." Harper was in her bouncy chair behind the counter, watching the ceiling fan rotate. She was 9 months old and obsessed with circular motion and the color yellow. She had Vivian's dark eyes and Jason's jaw and a smile that was entirely her own. Luca looked at her the way he looked at most things, careful, unhurried. "She's getting big," he said. "She's getting into everything," Vivian said. She pulled a full bag of coffee beans off the shelf last week. There were beans from here to the back wall. He almost smiled. She had learned to read the almost. Was she upset? She was delighted, Vivian said. "That's the problem." He did smile then, a full one, and it changed his face in a way she was not entirely prepared for. He told her in October. They'd gotten into the habit of sitting at the closed bar on Tuesday evenings after she'd locked up, sharing whatever was left of whatever she'd made that day. It had not been planned. It had accumulated, the way real things do, in small increments that each seemed insignificant on their own. She'd made a cardamom apple cake that week. She cut 2 slices and poured 2 small glasses of the Calvados. She kept on the high shelf, and they sat across from each other in the dark of the closed shop, the streetlight coming through the front windows, Harper asleep upstairs. "I need to tell you something," Luca said. She set her fork down. He told her about the company, not the real estate arm, the other one, the one that didn't have a website. He told her carefully, and without euphemism, the way she'd come to understand. He told everything, and she listened, and she understood that what he was describing was the kind of operation that most people only encountered in certain movies, and that Luca Voss was not a man she had fully known until that moment. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "Why are you telling me this?" she finally said. "Because I'm not willing to let this continue without you knowing." "Let what continue?" He looked at her directly. "This." He indicated the space between them with one hand. It was a small gesture. It landed like a statement. She looked down at her glass. The Calvados caught the light. Does it change things, he asked. I don't know yet, she said. It was honest, and he accepted it as honest. She didn't ask him to leave. She thought about that later, that her first instinct had not been to reach for her phone, not been to feel afraid. Her first instinct had been to sit with it, to hold it up against everything she already knew about this man and weigh it. She'd had a husband once who'd never told her anything uncomfortable. She knew what that felt like from the inside. She saw Jason again in November. He was at a restaurant she'd been taken to by her supplier for a business dinner, a nice place, white tablecloths, the kind of menu that describes the farm the lamb came from. Jason was 3 tables away with Tara and another couple, all of them laughing at something, and he noticed her at the same moment she noticed him. He looked at her the way he'd looked at her at the farmer's market, the same corner-of-the-mouth thing. Taking inventory. She was, from his vantage point, sitting at a table with her supplier and what appeared to be another business contact. She was wearing the black dress she only wore when she needed to feel certain. She had on the small gold earrings her mother had given her. She looked like herself, she thought. Not the farmer's market version. Just herself. Luca arrived late at 8:15. He'd texted to say his earlier meeting had gone long. He walked through the restaurant and found her table and put one hand briefly on her shoulder before sitting, and it was nothing. It was the most ordinary gesture, but it was also completely unambiguous, and she felt Jason see it from 3 tables away. She didn't look over. She didn't have to. Luca ordered. He apologized to her supplier for the tardiness with the kind of directness that made the apology land cleanly, and then disappear. She had noticed over months, someone who did not take up space with unnecessary noise. After the soup course, her supplier excused himself for a moment, and it was just the 2 of them across the table, and Luca looked at her and said quietly, "You're tense." "Ex-husband," she said. 3 tables. He did not look over. He picked up his wine glass. "Do you want to leave?" "No," she said, and meant it. "Good," he said. Later, in the coat check, she became aware that Jason had positioned himself nearby with a kind of casual intentionality she recognized from years of watching him navigate rooms. "Vivian," he said. "Hey." "Small world. Hi, Jason." He looked at Luca, then back at her. "I didn't know you were seeing someone. There are a lot of things you don't know about me," she said. Not unkindly. Just factually. Luca said nothing. He retrieved her coat and helped her into it, and his hand rested briefly at the back of her neck, and she was aware that this was deliberate, and she was aware that she didn't mind. Outside, in the cold air, she exhaled. "I'm sorry," Luca said, "for what that was." "Don't be." She pulled her coat tighter. "I needed to see that I could do it." He looked at her. "Stand in the same room as him," she said, "and not feel like less." He was quiet for a moment. "You have never been less," he said. "Not once." She believed him. That was the part that surprised her. Not that he said it, but that she believed it, and that believing it felt like setting something down she'd been carrying for a long time without realizing her arms were tired. She said yes in December. Not to a proposal. Luca was not a man who moved in conventional arcs, but to something harder and more specific, which was the conversation, where he asked her to stop treating what was between them as something that might not last, and she agreed to stop doing that. It was a Tuesday evening. Harper was asleep. There was leftover soup on the stove. "I've been keeping one foot out," she said. "I know," he said. "I think I was waiting for it to become something I could predict." "It won't," he said. "I can promise you a lot of things. I can't promise you predictable." She thought about the farm's market morning, about flour on her apron and $12 in her pocket, and Jason's expression, that inventory-taking look. She thought about what she'd believed about herself in that parking lot, that she was a woman standing in the wreckage of something, holding a baby, moving sideways. She looked at her kitchen, the good copper pot on the stove. Harper's drawing taped to the refrigerator, a circle with 2 smaller circles that may or may not have been a face. The stack of books on the counter she'd been meaning to read for 3 months. The apron hanging by the door. This was not wreckage. This was a life. She'd built it herself, and it was good, and Luca Voss was not the explanation for that. He was something additional, something that came after the building. "Okay," she said, He raised an eyebrow. Okay, don't make me say it twice, she said. He almost smiled. Then he smiled fully. She handed him a bowl of soup, and they sat at her kitchen table, and upstairs Harper slept through the whole thing, without any idea that her mother had just decided, clearly and without apology, that she was done being afraid of the good things.